Welcome to the Roarista Business Institute, your source for business marketing, advertising, and brand strategy, and as always, without the self-promotion, make-believe expertise, and generic fluff. You are listening to the Roarista Business Institute with your host, Tiger Webster.
Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of a brand. Branding, advertising, and marketing are often kind of dumped into the same arena. It's kind of like saying that a cheetah, a tiger, and a snail are all the same animal. They have different functions and they have different patterns. They're completely different animals. So branding, oftentimes people will define that as just aesthetics, a nice layout, clean graphics, nice design. Well, I need a brand. I need to look better. But then the company has a lot of nice, clean, elegant projection. But then there are a number of core fundamentals that are misaligned when it comes to the brand. Things like the actual culture of the company, the training, the policies and procedures, the communication, whether that be written, whether it be verbal, whether it be from executive to management or management to employee or employee to customer. Those lines of communication are often broken down in the process, and the brand is not always reinforced or even projected according to what was initially established. So those are some of the things that we want to discuss. I was recently on an airplane trip and met with the actual senior director for a global brand. I won't mention the name, but if I was, it's a household name, and I love what she said, that when you establish your brand and exhibit value to the end user, you don't have to dicker over price because your brand is valued. And again, that does not come just from a sexy, nice, clean design, a really pretty logo, even nice stationery. Every single part of your business is either taking away from your brand or it is reinforcing the brand. And so as you look through the various aspects of your operation or of your company, you and I have to ask ourselves, is there congruency? Is there consistency? Am I staying within the established guidelines? So a brand should really be established through a clear, concise mission statement. That mission statement, 2 to 3 sentences, clearly defines who you are and what you're all about. And then a brand would then come from that mission statement. A mission statement is usually not really, if you look at Apple or you look at, some of these Fortune 50 companies or Fortune 100 companies, the mission statement usually is just a few sentences. But then your brand comes from that, and when you establish that brand and you create those guidelines, come hell or high water, you do not deviate from those guidelines. And, what I've often seen, as we've worked with mid-sized companies, startups, well, we need a logo. There's a company over here that does logos. We need some business cards. Well, let's get our business cards over here. Well, there's a trade show coming up. Well, we better meet this deadline and get our trade show material. Well, there's a proposal and he needs it by Thursday. Well, where's our stationery? Well, and so now you start to look at the various aspects of a company, and you often see misalignment. And there's not, in a sense, if I can use this word, there's not one anthem or one tone or one cohesive, congruent streamlined brand all the way across all of the advertising and marketing collateral. And that is, it's interesting when you think about it. You have a public image or a public projection, whether you like it or not. Now, you may have one by default. It may not be by design. It may just be the way, in a sense, the chips have fallen. That's what you're projecting. Every time you send out that proposal, or every time you give a sales presentation, or go to a trade show, or advertise, or someone clicks on your website, or they interact with you on social media, or employees go into training, or the culture that you have within your organization, whether that's just been created through, we as business owners often, as someone has said, often do what is urgent instead of what is important. And hopefully by the end of this podcast, we can take an aerial view of the organization and ask, have I been doing what is urgent above and beyond what is important? Because if I can say one thing as it relates to branding, as that your brand or lack thereof is you're going to attract what you project. And that's not only as it relates to your customers, but also as it relates to kind of employees that want to come and work for your company or organization. I remember somebody making a statement about Chick-fil-A, and they said, it's impossible to train people to be that friendly. While I'm sure they have a phenomenal HR department with a very high standard in terms of screening and vetting their candidates, I beg to differ. I'm sure, I don't think I've ever been in Chick-fil-A without, anytime I say thank you, it's my pleasure. And it's somebody that worked for Chick-fil-A, and it's actually part of their training process that when a guest, not a customer, a guest says thank you, their knee-jerk or default reaction is my pleasure. And so these things can be built into a company structure and culture. Yes, you do need something to work with, and of course that's where a state-of-the-art and stellar HR department comes into play. But at the same time, when you look at branding, it is so critical, not again just from the type of customers that you attract, but the kind of people that want to work for you. How many times have we heard someone say, I decided to work for this company because I was first a customer for 10, 15, 20 years. I've heard that time and time again. And because of the consistency, the congruency, the kind of experience that they had, they wanted to be a part of that. So it's very, very key that we have the right pieces in place so that, again, not only externally for customers, but internally, we're attracting the people that represent, reinforce, and are just want to be a part of something that's great, something that's excellent, something that's world class, if that's the level of branding that you've sought out to create in the minds of the public. Throughout my life, I've never had any formal training. As I often say, I always feel like I was kind of the nerd that would just be almost intrigued by the way that Fortune 50, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, just the way that they created their systems and procedures and their public projection, and just researching and paying attention and observing and really seeking to understand why so much time and attention and effort is invested into this whole concept of branding. So before we get ahead of ourselves in this talk, and we don't like to keep these podcasts to where they're lengthy, but just to kind of go through a couple of key points, I'm going to just touch again on some of the key areas that we should be looking at as it relates to our brand. And again, company culture, the way that executives relate to management, management relates to employees. Training, not just the training content itself, but the font, the colors, the manuals, whether it's through video or it's through printed press or it's interactive or it's webinar, is it in line? Is it aligned with your brand? Technology, structure, the infrastructure of your company, your business, processes, procedures, when there's a complaint, when there's a reward, when there's an incentive. Do these things align with your core values as a company? Communication, resolving conflict. How is this handled? And again, does it in line with who you are as a brand? And then, last but not least, we look at some of the externals, such as we've mentioned earlier in this podcast, advertising campaigns, branded content, website, even your sales presentations, pricing, proposals, office environments, even your project workflow. That all of those things that we just mentioned are brand experience. But again, as we said earlier, often people just think of graphic design or aesthetics when it comes to branding, and then some of these deeper core values are often overlooked and are not even thought of as part of the brand. So we want to really thank you for taking some time to be a part of this podcast.
The Roarista Business Institute is brought to you by Roarista, helping businesses build and develop iconic brand identity through broadcast design, marketing, and brand repositioning. To learn more, please visit www.roarista.com. That is ROARISTA.com. We would also like to personally invite you to subscribe to this podcast today. Thank you for listening, and we will see you tomorrow at the Roarista Business Institute.